Today, some good news on COVID you won't hear in the mainstream media. Cuomo investigates Cuomo and finds that Cuomo did no wrongdoing, nothing to see here. And Colin Kaepernick signs a deal with Disney. We've got a lot coming up, and it starts right now. We did it, guys. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I'm Sarah Gonzalez, today joined by BlazeTV contributor Eric July, back in the house. A double dose of Eric July.
Of course, back
this
to
week.
back.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And also joined remotely by a fellow BlazeTV host, Steve Deace, host of The Steve Deace Show. Steve, thanks for being here.
You bet. Thanks for scraping the bottom of the barrel, Sarah.
Please, hardly. Well, and actually, I felt like, Steve, you and also Eric, you guys are perfect for today's coronavirus talk, because I know you are two people who actually look at, these pesky little things called facts and science when we're talking about this virus thing. So minor details. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported that the percentage of deaths in the United States has dipped low enough that the nation is at the epidemic threshold. So that means if we fall any lower, we will no longer call the coronavirus a pandemic. Or an epidemic, According to the CDC, they said that the percentage of deaths have declined for 10 weeks in a row, noting that based on death certificate data, the percentage of deaths attributed to pneumonia, influenza, or COVID-19 decreased from 9% during week 25 to 5.9% during week 26, representing a 10th week of declining percentage of deaths. The percentage is currently at the epidemic threshold, but will likely change as more death certificates are processed, particularly for recent weeks. However, we have seen this death decrease for a while now. But it's interesting because if you're listening to any channel on the mainstream media, even a lot of local news, you're not hearing this. You're not hearing that the deaths have declined. You're hearing cases are surging, cases are on the rise. You're even hearing the story about what happened in Houston, where they're falsely saying that all of the CEOs are raising red alarms, even though they have come out and said that's not the case. We're fine. We can handle the surge. So, Eric, let me go to you first. Are you surprised by this news? I find it to be good news. It's shocking to me that CNN's not reporting it.
Right, there's a lot of good news that they're not reporting. It's that they refuse to actually report it because it seems to go against whatever narrative that they're trying to perpetuate regarding trying to still make this seem as if it's doom and gloom. This is why the post keeps shifting. This is why we go from flattening the curve to now we're worrying about deaths, and now all we're worrying about is cases. Look at all the positive cases. They refuse to even mention the fact that the deaths are dipping, and that's because it changes everything regarding what they've been saying. Now, why are the deaths dipping? I think that's a conversation worth having. Is it because there are younger folks that are getting this and they're able to, kind of shrug this off? Like, what exactly is happening? I know there's been some things that have been up for questioning when it comes to like what they're considering the positive cases, like CDC. They're considering antibody. They're results. They're putting those in the positive cases as they happen. So it's like that person could have had it 3 months ago, but they get lumped in with these more recent data. So it makes it seem like it's more than what it is. Also, which per CDC, don't take my word for anything, they're including things in those positive antibody cases that are other coronaviruses, such as common colds and so forth, that may give you, let's say, a positive test. So all this is showing us is that this is not nearly as lethal as what they initially anticipated. It wasn't before, and it's certainly not now. My question is, no matter what they call it, can they please stop holding the country hostage for all of this nonsense, which is essentially what they're doing. They're still holding the country hostage because they keep finding these new things. It's like the guys don't want to get caught with the egg on their face. And it seems like that's the only reason why we continue to see that this gets kicked down the road. So while I'm not necessarily surprised that the CDC came out and said that this is what it is, because they have to, at the end of the day, report some of this data. But yeah, you're not going to catch more of the mainstream talking heads acknowledge this. And this is why they're focusing on what is going up. And that's the cases. And I'm like, so what? Yeah, the cases are going up, but let's talk about, who are the type of individuals that are being hospitalized? Are the people dying and so forth? They don't even want to have that conversation, just cases, as if we were supposed to assume that nobody was ever going to get the virus at all.
Yeah, context, what is it? Steve, what are your thoughts on the latest?
Sarah, there's so many lies. I mean, I could write a Tolstoy novel and I would just be scratching the surface. I mean, on Thursday before the Independence Day weekend began at about 10 o'clock Eastern, CDC decided to dump on us antibody tests that it had conducted in Utah, Florida, and Missouri. And it found that 11 to 24 times more people had been infected with antibodies than the current testing had identified, which, of course, dramatically lowers the IFR and the CFR, or the lethality, to make it easier, mortality for the virus. But here's the kicker. They actually conducted these, they've had these results since late April, early May. And they are finally deciding to drop this on us. And if you think they just did pin the tail on the state and picked Utah, and they don't know what the numbers are in New York, California, Arizona, Michigan, Illinois, I mean, I've got, a party that used to be an opposition party called the Republican Party to sell you. They've got all this data. They're sitting on it. Why? We've been able to do this math for the last couple of weeks since April 21st. I'll correct their own rate. It's actually dropped 92% since we had the peak death number on April the 21st. Deaths in this country have dropped 92%. Why are they just now telling us? Why are we just now getting antibody results that are 2 months old? Did you know Florida's excess death number is still behind the 2018 flu season? Today's July the 7th. If you look at your home state there of Texas, Hidalgo County is about 2.9% of your state's population. It has seen a 641% increase in cases. It is responsible for more than 20% of the deaths in your state, despite being less than 3% of the population. Gee, I wonder what goes on and it goes back and forth in Hidalgo County that could be leading to this. If you looked at California, Arizona, and Texas, you're going to see a massive spike in those border counties, cross-border traffic, way overrepresented compared to the states at large. Governor DeSantis in Florida said overwhelmingly migrant workers were responsible for the surge in new cases in his state. The amount of lies here are just ridiculous. And then we're told, hey, wait for 2 weeks. Well, the curve began upticking with new cases in this country on June the 10th. So here's the timetable. Typically, if you're going to have symptoms, it's 5 to 7 days. And then deaths lag about 3 weeks after infection. So we are in the middle right now. I mean, that's tomorrow's going to be 28 days, 4 weeks since the new case number began to tick up in this country. We should be in the middle of an increase in deaths right now, given those lagging indicators, and we are not. And so I was speaking today with someone who is going to have a say in whether you get college sports back this fall. All right. And I was shocked, maybe I shouldn't have been, how much of this data this person had not yet seen. And this, of course, is malfeasance from the media that wants to shut the country down so Joe Biden's dementia can win. But at some point, today the White House finally decided to go on offense about opening schools. It should have been doing stuff like this for the last 2 months.
Absolutely.
Whatever fake news it was up against with Russian collusion and Ukrainian phone calls, it has definitely the potential to end his presidency if we don't reopen the country. And he's got to use the bully pulpit, the most powerful platform on the planet, to push back against this, Sarah.
I could not agree with you more, Steve. And you bring up reopening schools, which really was on my list of things to bitch and complain about today, because I saw a story that was up at theblaze.com it said Florida orders schools to reopen in the fall, but some districts are already leaning toward no. And from the article, there was the Orange County Classroom Teachers Association, who of course had something to say about the move. But what struck me was that in their statement where they said, we don't agree with this, we think it's irresponsible, they said the CTA will not support a reopening plan that could expose students, teachers, or their families to illness, hospitalization, or death. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, We have a bunch of people who are responsible for teaching our children who don't realize that every single day they are exposed to illness. They are potentially exposed to illness. Every single day they're walking into a classroom. I can assure you the kids are not germ-free. So what sort of society do they think that they have been living in this entire time that they have not already been potentially exposed to illness, hospitalization, or death anytime they leave their doorstep? Eric, it's just like this pervasive new idea that since before pre-coronavirus, we have been protected from all contagious disease. Where does this come from?
It just goes to show how manipulative, when it comes to not just regular media, but social media as well, and how it warps everybody's line of thinking. And we have these actions definitely that come by way of policy, by way of the state, that doesn't even seem to make sense when you put it in the context of just recent human history. What we're doing right now, pretty much worldwide, doesn't make any sense. We've never done this. We're talking about something that has an infected fatality rate generally everywhere across the world of point whatever, right? You're talking 99%, over 99% of a survival rate, and we've shut things down. People are refusing, definitely, of course, the ones that get funding from the government in some way, shape, or form. They don't want to go back to work. But more so, you speak to a great point, and that is we act as if viruses, sicknesses, illnesses have never happened. And it's so odd. They give you a ticker. They say this is the amount of people that are testing positive because we're doing all this testing that we don't do for any other virus at all. We don't even do that for influenza or anything, where people just get this random test, or if you need to get tested or you want to get tested, you can. We've never done anything like that. But we have this idea as if pre-COVID-19, nobody was ever exposed to sicknesses, even in the same way. The things that they're telling us to do, wear masks and all of these other things that they say, well, this would halt the spread of this. Okay, would it halt the spread of these other viruses? If so, why were you not having these silly mandates before? Why were you not advocating? No, you're just doing what you're told, and you've unfortunately failed to this whole fear-mongering thing. But none of it makes sense. You're completely right. You go in a class, definitely in a classroom, when you consider that's what kids do. They go around spreading viruses and all kinds of crazy stuff. You probably guaranteed to get some of those viruses if you are in a classroom. Why we act like this is brand new, I don't know. But they give you a ticker. They give you these cases. They have all of these studies and more so testing that's being done worldwide, nationwide, and they say, okay, you're paying attention to it because that's all the media is talking about. So you're paying attention to it, and they're acting as if this is new. And this is why when you ask them, okay, why were we not doing this before? They can't ever give you an answer. How long are we supposed to do this? They can never give you an answer. Why? Because this is what's going on with this virus. Sure, it may be novel.
Because the answer is November 4th.
That's true. That is very true. That's very true. It is, more so we're getting closer to the election, and maybe then we'll, depending on the results, that is, we'll see if we're going to get to the point where we can get back to some sort of normalcy. But none of it makes sense. None of it.
Yeah, Steve, you're absolutely right. I can see it now. November 4th, all of a sudden the pandemic is gone, the epidemic is gone. We have nothing to worry about. But do you think, are these teachers really this just uneducated on the matter, or is this some sort of a bargaining chip for a teachers union that they just want, more pay or something at the end of the day?
Teacher unions are notorious political animals. I think it's all politics. No other free industrialized nation on earth is doing this. Over 20 of them already sent their kids back to school. You've been going back to school in Wuhan, China since the first week of May. We are literally, guys, I'm just telling you, we're the only free industrialized nation on earth doing this to each other, having these conversations. And so Occam's razor comes into effect. You have to ask yourself then, what's the rationale? What's the most obvious explanation for what incentivizes us to kneecap ourselves when they're not doing that anywhere? They're not doing it in Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, Spain, Italy. They're not doing it. Israel had the worst lockdown in the world for about a month and then became Sweden in about 30 days when they started looking at the data. Why are we still doing this? The only event we have going on that incentivizes us to kneecap our way of life when no other industrialized free country is doing this to themselves is we're having an orange man bad election. And I don't want that to be the answer. I hate that kind of low-lying fruit. But tell me what else we have. What else is going on that incentivizes? Understand where we're at. The conservatives are arguing to put the kids back in the government schools. And the progressive leftists are like, no, leave them at home. How did we get to this place? Okay, it doesn't make any sense. And so it must be the election is why we're not looking at science, not looking at data that every other nation on earth has already looked at and made these determinations.
Wow. You talk about a light bulb moment. I didn't even think about it that way. Steve, you just said it. I was like, oh, crap, you're right. That is really crazy. All right, we've got a lot more to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Real Estate Agents I Trust. Trying to sell your home. Let me just tell you, I'm supposed to close on my home Thursday. Trying to sell your home is really hard. And we still are like on pins and needles making sure that it actually closes on Thursday. And we even have a really, really, really good real estate agent. I can imagine all of the other real estate agents out there. You know, you go to Google and you type in real estate agent in my area and there's 10 million of them that pop up. Maybe they're like a part-time plumber. You don't even know that there are so many people who are wannabe real estate agents these days. That's why you have to go somewhere where you can trust, someplace where the real estate agents have already been vetted for you. And that is Real Estate Agents I Trust. It is Glenn's company. And when you have the kind of agents who work with Glenn working for you, you can rest assured that you are going to be in the hands of a very capable team of people who will see your selling process through from the day you interview them until the moment you sign on the dotted line. The same goes for buying a home. When you choose your agent through Real Estate Agents I Trust, you've just partnered yourself to a competitive winning machine, a team of people who are going to see it through for you. Real Estate Agents I Trust. I mean, do I need to say more? It's kind of all in the name there. Real Estate Agents I Trust. You've got to be able to go to someone you can trust with one of the biggest investments you're ever going to make. You can go to realestateagentsitrust.com. It'll take you 2 minutes. You fill out a very simple form. You usually have someone that gets back to you, a real estate agent in your area, within like 10 minutes. And I did it. Okay, I trust me. I did it. I went through the process. I went to realestateagentsitrust.com. I submitted my information, and it was at 7 o'clock at night, and we still had someone call within 10 minutes. It was a real estate agent in our area who we knew we could trust to sell our home for the best value. You got to go to realestateagentsitrust.com. That is realestateagentsitrust.com. Back in a minute. All right, next up, the Cuomo administration. Don't worry, you guys. They investigated the Cuomo administration and found that there was no wrongdoing with the Cuomo administration in New York. So a special investigation, of course, commissioned by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's administration, claims that it was healthcare workers who cared for the patients in the nursing facilities where we saw so many deaths in New York. It was the healthcare workers who were to blame for hundreds of COVID-19 deaths and not the governor's own policy that forced all of these facilities to accept coronavirus positive patients. Now, of course, New York hospitals released more than 6,300 recovering coronavirus patients into nursing homes during the height of the pandemic under a controversial, now scrapped, of course, policy. And still, the office says even though Andrew Cuomo released all of these patients back into these nursing home facilities, it was not the policy that caused all of these deaths. It was actually all of the healthcare workers, the positive staff and visitors who unknowingly infected the vulnerable population of nursing home patients. This was in a 33-page review that was released yesterday. I, for one, find it shocking, Eric, that Andrew Cuomo's special investigation found that Andrew Cuomo did no wrongdoing.
Yeah, of course. It's generally what happens when we talk about government. But it reminds me a lot of the protest deal where you basically had a bunch of people validate this nonsensical idea that they had nothing to do with the spread, though they had been doing the opposite of what they had been lecturing us when it comes to social distancing and so forth. What happened here was a crime on his behalf. It was a crime on his administration's behalf. But it shows that, and on a serious note, I want people to pay attention that this issue, when we talk about the spread of this virus, it's not merely a scientific issue, unless you consider economics a science, which I should understand that, but it's also an economic issue. And this is why we can't just be held hostage by what a couple of scientists that work for the government say. This was purely an economic issue. And what I mean when I say that is that there are, let's say New York, for example, the millions of people that live in New York. We knew before the virus had even got here that there was a vulnerable population of people that would more than likely have a severe reaction when it came to these diseases. Obviously, those people tend to be in the nursing homes, right? That's what the data said. The data said that long before it even got here. You can look at the Chinese numbers, you can look at the South Korean numbers, you can look at the Italian numbers. They all said the same thing before it even had a breakout. So if you had been allocating all your time, all of your effort, all of your resources towards protecting the most vulnerable, things like this don't happen. But what did happen, because people want to use this as this sort of political play, make themselves out to be heroes, they tried to treat the entire population like they were 95 years old. And that's not what they were. And it wasn't just New York that had this issue. Other spots had this issue. We just know that with the whole idea that you had to basically accept these patients that had been recovered, had already knowingly tested positive for these, and yet we still had this breakout within the nursing homes of people getting sick and dying from this virus. But that's what happens when you don't pay attention to the people that you should have been paying attention to. You can't save everybody. That's the reality. So who's the most vulnerable people? It seems like we have this box where we keep them all at, and that's the nursing homes. That should have been their entire effort placed right there. Instead, what they did, many other states did, they tried to focus on us all and treat us all like we were the same. All of you guys got a lockdown. Every single business, no matter what age, no matter what health demographic, even though we knew who was most vulnerable. So yes, it's a crime on his behalf in that he had a policy as such, but it's not just on him. The other states did a similar thing, and it makes no sense. But this is why you can't just hold everybody hostage to something like that, because they can be the smartest scientists in the world. That doesn't mean they know a lick about allocation of resources. That doesn't mean they understand a lick about scarcity or why we economize in the first place to avoid situations like this. This is why you don't let them hold us hostage.
Yeah, Steve, it's not just it's this, but it's also the media who is demonizing Texas, Florida, the places who are now seeing these COVID-19 surges, and they're unwilling to look at New York and what happened in New York and why they had such a quick surge. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, he's kind of hailed as a hero these days in the mainstream media. Now he releases this investigation. I guess he's allowed to get away with literal murder?
Well, Sarah, I just go by data. I like objectivity. I like to know cut and dried what's true and what's not. So I'll just respond with the actual data. The total amount of deaths as we sit here today on July 7th, the total amount of deaths in Texas, Arizona, and Florida would equal, when you combine them all, about 1/3 of the amount of death New York State saw. And the population of those three states is triple the population of New York State. That's one piece of data. Secondly, here's another. 43% of all deaths in America have occurred in nursing homes. Coronavirus deaths have occurred in nursing homes. Only 0.6% of the American population lives in nursing homes, which means if you're in the 99.4% of the population of America that lives outside of a nursing home, your IFR, CFR, et cetera, for this virus goes down demonstrably. Also, what we know is that the deaths in the 6 states, New York was not the only one to issue this order. There were 6 states that did it, 5 under Democratic governors, 1 Massachusetts under a Republican governor. If you look at the death toll in those 6 states compared to the rest of the country, it's by far the majority of deaths in America just so happened to coincide with the 6 states, including New York, that issued these orders for nursing homes. And then finally, what I find fascinating is that pretty much since the beginning of May, a majority of deaths in America have occurred in nursing homes. And yet, New York State, when a bunch of states around them are saying 50, 70, 80% of our deaths have occurred in nursing homes, New York State, which was the pioneer in reinfecting its nursing homes with the COVID infected, and did so with more than 6,000 such humans. New York State is claiming only 14% of its deaths occurred in nursing homes. Now, how do you explain when 43% of all deaths happened in nursing homes? New York State led the nation in deaths, so much so that 3 other states with a total population of about 60 million people, are only still 1/3 of its total deaths. And yet it is claiming only 14% of its deaths are in nursing homes. How does that math add up? I can answer for you. It does not.
Okay, good, because I was about to go. I was like, well, I don't know how that math adds up. So thank you for clearing that up, Steve. All right, we've got a lot more to get into, including Colin Kaepernick signing a deal with Disney for a docu-series about his very, very oppressive, very hard life. First, we want to thank our sponsor, new sponsor of the show, CarShield. So computer systems in cars, everyone has them there. They're the new normal. You've got electronically controlled transmissions, touchscreen displays, a bunch of sensors that you don't even realize exist in your car, but they do. But you cannot fix any of these new features yourself. So something breaks and you don't realize there's this tiny little sensor that could actually cost you a ton of money to fix. Now is not the time for expensive repairs. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a bunch of people out of jobs, getting paid less right now because of everything that's going on. That is a great reason to have CarShield. CarShield has affordable protection plans that can save you thousands for a covered repair, including computers, GPS, electronics, so much more. CarShield understands that payment flexibility is a must, especially right now. Monthly plans can be customized to your needs with rates as low as $99 a month. There's no long-term contracts. There's no commitments. CarShield gives you an option that others will not. You can also just take it to your favorite mechanic if you have a favorite mechanic. You can take your car there or to the dealership to do the work, and CarShield takes care of the rest for you. It really is that simple. They also offer complimentary 24/7 roadside assistance and a rental car while yours is being fixed. They are the real deal, and they have helped over 1 million customers. You can drive with confidence with CarShield. You can go to 800 if you want to call, if you still use those phones for its intended purpose, which originally was calling. You can call 800-CAR-6000 and mention promo code Y, that's WHY, or you can visit carshield.com. Use code Y to save 10% right now. That is carshield.com, promo code Y, save you 10%. We'll be back in a minute. Former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick announced today that he has inked a deal with Disney, ESPN, to make a docu-series about his own life. And it will be, of course, a series of social justice films. He said, "I am excited for this partnership with Disney across all of its platforms to elevate Black and brown directors, creators, storytellers, and producers. I look forward to sharing culturally impactful and inspiring projects." Now, in case those of you, maybe you don't watch the NFL or you've been living under a rock, Kaepernick actually left the NFL in 2017 after turning down a one-year contract with the 49ers. And that was, of course, after he took a knee. Oh, but the taking a knee was after, of course, he was benched because he wasn't a good quarterback. But I digress, minor details. The project will include input, so happy to hear this, from Jamel Hill, a fellow racial justice advocate and former ESPN employee who was terminated from the network following comments she made about President Trump. And when you're fired from ESPN about making comments about President Trump, you know it's really bad, because ESPN is just kind of like the black hole of leftist politics right now. So, Eric, it's interesting because I just heard from Colin Kaepernick just over this 4th of July. He seems to talk a lot about how oppressed Black Americans are. And all I see from him is just good news. I mean, he's rich. He's just signed this deal with Disney, ESPN. It doesn't really feel like he is that oppressed.
No, he's not at all. Let's be 100 about that. Half black guy by the name of Colin Kaepernick, who is just as much white as he is black, by the way, is not oppressed. But this is what it is. It's race hustling, man. This is what these types do. He's probably made more money off the field. I can't confirm that, but
certainly his deal with Nike.
He's making a lot of money that has absolutely nothing to do with him actually playing on the field. And I'm not knocking anybody getting their money or anything like that. And I can almost guarantee, from what I had read on what it is that they're trying to do with this partnership or whatever with Disney, it's going to be the same old nonsense. It's not going to be any sort of diversity in terms of thought. I can imagine, no matter how many black and brown voices that he claims to be linking up with and assisting, I'm willing to bet I'm not going to be one of those guys that's going to get any sort of opportunity to have my voice heard in this regards. But no, this is what race hustling is. This is what these types do. They get in these positions of power, and they can make a lot of money off of. But this was always what this little movement was about. I kept trying to tell people, they acted like it wasn't the case. These folks want access to these people's resources, particularly folks that they feel are white folk. They want access to those resources. All that stuff that they talk about, acting as if they're anti-capitalist, and all, that's just nonsense. What they generally want is access to those resources. They want access to that pool of money and want to be a part of it. They just use this form of racial guilting more so to get access to those said resources. I said this on the show a long time ago, that this is always what this movement sort of turned into, was that it was a movement about begging to be accepted, acknowledged, and more so begging for access to these guys' resources. It was never about creating their own or anything like that. If they felt they were being kept out, creating their own, that was never what it was about. It was like, you guys have stuff and we want to guilt trip you into giving us access to those things. I would argue that it'd be way more powerful if Kaepernick and those types did their own thing instead of going through those big mega corporate entities, the Disneys of the world, which control so much. Instead of going through them, it would have been, to me, more conducive if they actually pulled their resources within their own sort of circle, pool of rich athletes and entertainers and so forth, and say, all right, we're going to create our own little thing and do that. But no, it's this, hey, let's go work with Disney and have them funnel our sort of message and everything of that nature. So this is race hustling 101. He's not the first, and he's certainly not going to be the last one. Him or Jamil Hill, they won't be the last ones to do this.
Yeah, Steve, the senior vice president of ESPN, said in a statement that they want to call attention to the issues of racial injustice that America is wrestling with and do that in new, compelling ways. Your thoughts? I'm thinking you might have a few.
You know, we played a video on my show the other day of a white girl, an Antifa white girl lecturing a black police officer that he didn't understand what racism was. And I was greatly inspired by that. So I would like to now lecture Eric on what oppression really is and what racism really is. And I think you have to look no further than Colin Kaepernick's own life. I mean, it started when he was 4 months old. And unfortunately, a white Christian family had the unmitigated audacity to take this, regressive command to love your neighbor as you love yourself and adopt this child into their home. Mm-hmm. From there, they impose their white heteronormative, dominance over him throughout his childhood as he became a stellar athlete and student. Unfortunately, though, he wasn't getting recognized by colleges that were recruiting for quarterbacks. They didn't think he could play. And so his white high school coach, again, stepping on the throat of his black liberation, took his film and peddled it all over the country to college coaches to try to get him signed, finally getting the attention of a future Hall of Fame football coach at the University of Nevada by the name of Chris Ault, himself, of course, clearly a racist, who decided to create an entire offense called the Pistol Offense in order to take advantage of Colin Kaepernick's unique skill set and turn him into a second-round draft choice in the NFL. Of course, he was drafted there by a white coach by the name of Jim Harbaugh, who everyone knows from his playing days and going back to when he was, of course, a coach in the NFL as well, was a virulent racist. I mean, that's how he earned the nickname Adolph Rupp. And when he drafted Colin Kaepernick, much higher than anybody thought he would be selected, after about a year of making him ride the bench just because he was half black, he then made the decision that exposed further his latent racism when he benched the white quarterback, Alex Smith, the #1 overall draft pick in the NFL draft. He benched him in the middle of the season and inserted an unproven half-black player drafted in the second round named Colin Kaepernick instead. And then, despite holding him back, of course, the entire time, rode him all the way to the Super Bowl, where they were just seconds away from actually winning the championship. I think when you now look at the fact his net worth is over $20 million, he's now been signed by arguably the most beloved corporation on the planet Earth, Disney, me, there is no end to the systemic racism that Colin Kaepernick has suffered these many years since he was 4 months old. And if that story doesn't move you, if that story doesn't show you indeed what Black America is up against, then at this point, I mean, you might as well just go ahead and put a noose around your own neck.
All right. Well, there you have it from Steve Dace.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
We've got a lot more coming up. First, we want to thank our sponsor. This time, it really is Home Title Lock. It is. They've got the right one in for me now. So working from home is actually, a lot of you are working from home right now. You don't realize that's driving up the worst type of cybercrime that exists, and that is home title theft. Think about all that you're doing from home right now. You're working, you're doing your banking from home, video conferences, you're doing meal deliveries. Cyber criminals are targeting our homes right now, and they want the money they can get by taking out loans against your house. Yeah, you don't realize that that's possible. You think that you have your house secure. You set your alarm when you leave your house, and you think, well, our home is secure. It's not, actually. Home Title Lock is how you protect your home from the cyber thieves. Your home's legal title is stored online, where the cyber thieves can easily find it. They'll forge your signature saying that you sold your home to them, and then they can take out the loans on your home and leave you in debt. You know, you've got all of this mortgage, all of this equity that you are building in your house. You may be using it as a retirement nest egg. You've got to make sure to protect yourself. There's no bank, there's no insurance program, there's no identity theft service that protects you. Home Title Lock does. They will put a virtual barrier around your home's title. You got to protect your home. You can go to HometitleLock.com, register your address to see if you're already a victim. You're not going to know it until it's too late unless you go there and enter your address. Use code Y, that's WHY, for 30 free days of protection. In case you've got a crisis on your hands, they will help you through the crisis. 30 days for free. You can go to HometitleLock.com. That is HometitleLock.com, promo code Y. Actress Halle Berry is one of the latest to bow to the woke mob. She was considering a role of a transgender man in a movie that is shortly to be filmed, and she has now stepped down from the role after online backlash. Now, this backlash started after Halle Berry was interviewing about the potential project and I guess misgendered the character a couple times during the interview. So it is a woman, a biological woman, who I say this every time, we need a frickin' flow chart to explain this because it is so confusing in 2020. She's supposed to play a biological woman who transitioned into a man. And during Halle Berry's interview, she said, she had the audacity, I should say, to make the statement, who this woman was is so interesting to me, and that will probably be my next project. Well, you can't say that it was a woman, even though it was a biological woman, because this is a transgender man. So she got hit with online backlash. She was tweeted at by Disclosure Documentary, which apparently has some sort of clout in the industry. I've never heard of it. They said, "Hi, Halle Berry. We heard you're considering playing a trans man in your next project. We ask that you please watch Disclosure Doc on Netflix." Wow, no conflict of interest there. First, to understand how cis actors like yourself acting in the roles has major cultural consequences off screen. Halle Berry, of course, caved. She tweeted out, "Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to discuss my consideration of an upcoming role as a transgender man, and I'd like to apologize for those remarks. As a cisgender woman, I now understand that I should not have considered this role and that the transgender community should undeniably have the opportunity to tell their own stories," yada, yada, yada. She goes on. I'm just wondering, though, Eric, when we have all of these movies that exist about murderers, about pedophiles, about things of that nature, are the people who play them, are these actual murderers? Are we not to accept anything else? Because I thought that the entire point of being an actor was that you were freaking playing a part of someone who you are not.
I wonder what the context of the role is. Is she playing does she transition within the movie? Because if she's a woman, I mean, at some point in the movie, wouldn't you need a actual woman to play her?
I mean,
I can't.
Hollywood makeup, Hollywood magic.
That's true. So I don't exactly know what the context of the movie. But here's my actual take on this. Believe it or not. Okay, so be it. I'm a comic book guy, right? stop tokenizing the damn characters if that's the case. If we're going to keep to the logic that the characters need to be played by characters that benefit them, why is Valkyrie black in which is based off Norse mythology, which I don't know if you can even get whiter than that. Why is Valkyrie black by played by Tessa Thompson? Why do we have these other I mean, you can go, I got mountains of videos talking about this topic because I see it so often where you're getting basically, they're crossing over into the live action and you have Black Iris West, you have all these black versions of characters that have historically been white. Why don't we keep the same energy there? Now, that might not work the way they want it to work because, let's be real, Halle Berry, very, you know who Halle Berry is. She has that star, maybe not as much as before, but she does have some sort of star power.
First black woman to win an Oscar for Best
Absolutely.
Actress.
So people may go see it because of her. Look, if you want to take that chance and you want to give those roles to these people, fine, whatever. But when people don't go watch it, don't come griping about, oh, you guys are transphobic and all of that sort of stuff. I need you to keep that energy up, but more so I want to keep that energy up when we talk about these other things like I've been talking about for years when it comes to crossing over into these other characters crossing over into live action depictions, and then they get played by some black person or even a woman or something like that in a classically, let's say, male role. I want to keep that same energy, but they won't. They won't.
Steve, we've got about a minute here. I thought that acting was supposed to be, like acting to be someone that you're not. What am I missing?
What I'm missing is whose dumbass idea was it to take the exquisite fineness of Halle Berry and turn her into a dude? That person should be fired, have his eyes plucked out, and deported.
That's
simple enough.
I mean, really, I don't know how you add on to that. That speaks for itself. All right, we will be back in just a minute.
Simple enough. I love it.
Yesterday's poll was who is more divisive? The options, before I give the answer, because Eric, you were here, but I'm curious to get Steve's quick thoughts. The options were the media, President Trump, or the Democrats. Who is more divisive? Steve, I said, I don't know how you differentiate between the media and the Democrats. What do you think?
Nice. I think the answer is the media. I think because they feed off the division in only self-destructive ways. You view Trump as a divisive figure or the Democratic Party as a divisive figure. There's at least a political means to an end there that will benefit somebody. These people are just nihilists who like to tear down stained glass windows.
Well, the audience agreed with you. The majority of the audience agreed with you. They said we got 70% who said it is the media, followed by 23%, 23.5% who said the Democrats, and President Trump 6.5%, because we got to have a couple trolls in this very scientific BlazeTV poll that we give you every day. Today's poll is, should schools reopen this fall or stick to online classes? Now, I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that any of you who are saying that schools should stick to online classes probably don't have kids. Because if you have kids, you are like Steve, I think when I drop my son off the first day of school, I'm not even going to stop in carpool line. Like, I'm just going to keep going at a very slow rate and tell him to tuck and roll and hurry the hell in the front door. What do you think? You're with me, right?
I think now I know how you guys felt last segment. I think I don't know how to follow that. So, okay. That's my, yes. That's my reply. Okay.
Steve agrees. That's what I'm getting from that, is that he agrees. Let us know what you think. You can go to the Blaze's Twitter. That is @TheBlaze. Let us know, should schools reopen this fall, or are you completely wrong and you have a different opinion than that? Don't forget, you can catch the Steve Deace Show every day, Monday through Friday, immediately following Glenn Beck. It is 11 a.m. Central to 1 p.m. Central. Thank you so much for being here, Steve. And Eric as well. You can catch him on YouTube. I always love to say this. It's Young Ripper on YouTube.